Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy and we're doing some Dollar Tree DIYs for your fall home decor. I ran out of breath. So we had a super bummery thing happen. This is Israel, our tree guy, and our beautiful tree on the side of our house died, I think from the excessive heat we've had lately. But I didn't want him to go to waste, so I'm going to use some of his branches and parts to make some DIYs. I had Israel cut down some pieces. I measured them and got them ready. I knew what I kind of already wanted to do. This one was laying flat and it was kind of curved at the top, which I thought was really pretty. This is our olive tree in the front yard and it had to be trimmed anyway, so I took some of those stems and all of the branches, or some of the branches. We stripped off the leaves and then Michael J put them in this tub of water and let them sit for about a week or so, just so that they would be nice and flexible, and I was able to do a DIY that I already had in my head. So that's what we're going to do first. So I'm going to take two of these Dollar Tree pumpkin wreath forms, and you've probably seen this 70 times, but I'm going to put them together using some nylon zip ties, and I'm just going to go around and attach them in about, I don't know, 3 or 4 places. I'm just going to slip those on every now and then in between those little wire pieces. Now I want the bottom to be flat, so I just made sure that the ones at the bottom were loose enough that I could separate those, and then I'm going to cut off all of the excess. So then I took this Dollar Tree plaque, and it's just like a slice of wood that's already done, so this was perfect to make this the stand. Now on the edges I pulled the 2 beams that come together. I pulled those apart, you know, they're wire. I used my needle nose pliers and just separated them so that it didn't look like there was 2 doubled up, and now I have 2 open ends, you know, so it looks like one big one going all the way around. Now I'm going to take my handy dandy Milwaukee staple gun, and there's a little gap on the little piece that goes against the wood, whatever you're stapling. And so I put my wires in between that gap so that my staple would go on both sides of my wire that I was stapling down. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? It was right in the middle. So you see how it's kind of sliding back and forth? That's because it's metal and it's on this metal wreath. So anyway, I just kind of finagled my hand in there, and I'm going to go all the way down over the double-sided part in the middle, and then I go onto the sides and I'll staple those down on each side, give that a couple of staples, and then it stays snug as a bug in a rug on my little stand. So now I'm going to start taking my twigs and wrapping them around those little beams. What should I call those? I don't know. I guess you could call them like tines, you know, like tines of a fork. But anyway, I'm just going to start wrapping those around. And the force of, you know, it's physics, I guess. When you put your stem in there, it's going to go against the wood at the bottom, and then I can just wrap it around. Now, because I haven't got a lot on there yet, as I keep going, they're going to get tighter and tighter so that they stay in place. And once I get all of the vertical ones going on and wrapped around, I'll start going in a horizontal motion to get them to stay all in place. And you may want to spray paint your pumpkin wreath form first. I didn't think it was necessary because it's kind of dark and just basically goes away. You'll see it at the end. But I'm just going to keep doing this, and because those stems were in water for so long, they were super flexible. This was really fun and kind of therapeutic, but I'm just going to wrap that all around until I get as much as I want, and then when I decide that's enough, that's when I'm going to stop. And if your branches are a little too long, just snip those off. And if there's a place where you can feed your stem through the other stems. I'm not explaining this very well, but you see what I'm doing here. I'm just crisscrossing and going anywhere that I can, making sure to keep the inside open and the wreath form completely covered. So once I get my pumpkin completely covered the way I want, I'm going to use some of these fairy lights that I got from Amazon, and I have them linked in the description box below. You guys have been really purchasing these quite a bit, so just in time for Christmas. I'm going to actually add another light, so you'll have 2 strings of lights. Anyway, I'm going to take a little piece of a pool noodle and some nautical rope, and this was one that I had used when I was testing it to see how the paint would take in another project. But anyway, I'm going to take my rope and I'm going to unravel that. There's 3 strands in there. This is going to be the stem of my pumpkin, and I want it to be pretty tall and big because our wreath is so big, but I'm going to have a big perky bow up there, so I want some of that stem to stick up. So I'm going to cut a slice in it and put it over the stem of the wreath form, make sure it fits, and then I'm going to start gluing my pieces of rope to the sides. I'm going to let a little bit hang over, and then that's going to be the bottom part that'll cover up all the ickies at the bottom of my stem. You won't even really see a lot of it, but it does add a little bit of cuteness to look like a real stem. And so I'm just going to go all the way around my pool noodle. You may want to use your finger protectors for this, just to keep that glue off of your fingers. I don't like the feeling of that glue being stuck to my fingers. Not that it's burnt it or anything, but it just kind of builds up over time. Anyway, once I get that completely covered and I get a little bit on there, I'm going to cut those bottom portions off. You know, I go a little bit longer, and I'm using scrap rope in this because I always keep my leftovers. So this is a perfect time to use those extra scraps. And I made one strand kind of go around or wrap around just to make it look a little more authentic. Again, you really don't notice that unless you're inspecting my stem. And then at the top, I'm going to take some hot glue and just wrap it around and cover up the top of my pool noodle. And you can see ickies hanging off of my nails there. Ugh, I don't like that. And then once I get to the center, I'll just kind of curly cue it and stick it into the hole at the top of the noodle. And then I'm going to take some Spanish moss, and I'm just kind of wiggling or jiggling my hands inside an opening. And I'm just going to lay that Spanish moss down along the bottom of my pumpkin. And then I added my second set of lights, I think, at that point. So now it's time to make a big perky bow, and I'm going to take this Dollar Tree ribbon, and I'm taking some thicker ones and then some 5/8 ones. And I love the pattern of this ribbon, the one with the pumpkins, and it's got a little bit of blue in there. I think that's always so pretty. I'm going to roll one side over and take it to about the midway point, and then squishy it up and then stick it into my fingers so that I can hold it. And I'm making all of my loops go in the same direction, and I'm just alternating the size and pattern into the way that I want it. And then once I get them all into a pretty little bundle, I'm going to take a nylon zip tie and wrap that around the entire thing so that I have a little, I don't know, wedding bouquet, and then pull that super, super tight and cut off the excess. And now I can foof out my loops and move those tails around. And of course, you're going to want to dovetail the edges. But this kind of takes the guesswork out of foofing your loops. I know a lot of people have told me that they make their perky bows, but then they can never get it to look right when they're doing the foofing. So this way, the foofing's already done for you. So now I'm going to take another zip tie and feed that in through my first zip tie. And that's what I'll use to attach it to the top of my wreath. It's not a wreath, you know what I mean. At the bottom of my stem on the top of my wreath form. So now I'm going to take some lamb's ear from Walmart, and I'm just going to cut those down and add this to the side of my perky bow, just on one side, and I thought that was all it needed to finish it off. So then as an afterthought, I found this thankful sign in all of my fall goodies, and I thought it would fit perfectly at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of maneuver it in between my little pieces, my tines, and get that to tuck right in there. I lived with this for a couple of weeks and realized it was just too dark and I couldn't see it. So I'm going to go back, take it out of my pumpkin, and then I used my white chalk paint. I'm going to paint that all up. I really don't like to paint these because it takes so much time, and there's all these little nooks and crannies you have to get into, and spray paint doesn't kind of go on it very well. The wood just kind of sucks that paint up. So I went ahead and did the chalk paint, and then I gave it a little sanding at the edges just to give it a little more farmhouse cuteness, and then it was done. And here it is, completely done. I didn't restage it or anything. I just thought I would show you, but I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For this next project, I'm using 3 of these super adorable little fall decor pieces from the Dollar Tree, and then 3 Dollar Tree signs. These are a little thicker. They're kind of like boxes, so I like to keep these on hand for anything. So super easy project. I'm going to take the little pieces apart, and I just took the jute twine off and then took out the staples from the back. I want to keep all the beads and the tassels in place. So the hardest part, well, I don't know if this is the hardest part, but this is the hardest part for me, to get those staples staples out of the back. I'm just using my needle nose pliers to do that. And then on my signs, there's these little sweet roses on the front out of wood. I'll save those and keep those for something else because it's not hoarding if you use it. And then I'll take all my tags off of the back and get these all ready to go. So now I'm going to measure and get pretty close to the center of each of my signs, both on the top and the bottom of the frames. And I'm going to take my drill and drill a small little hole right at the top and at the bottom. And then once I get those first holes drilled, I'm going to use that as a template to mark my second and third frames. And that way I don't have to use my ruler more than I have to. So now that my holes are all drilled, I'm going to take the top 2 beads off of my little tassel. I'm going to feed that through my frame going up from the bottom, and then I'll bring it back out through the top, and then I'll put my little beads right back on there. And then because I've got that twine and it's a little bit lifted, I'm going to add a couple of Jenga blocks onto the back of each of my shapes. And that way it'll go right over that jute twine, but I want to make sure it doesn't show through from the front of each of those little pieces. So once I get it on there, then I'm just going to glue that onto the back of my frame. And that's also going to cover up the ickies from the label that we took off. So I'll do that for my leaf and my little pumpkins. And you could paint the insides or back the frames if you wanted. I like the pretty brown of this wood, but I am going to go back and paint the frames or the top part. You'll see that in just a second. So now to hang these, I'm going to take another branch from our poor little tree, may he rest in peace, and I'm just going to feed that through the top parts of my tassels and make this a wall hanging. And that's literally all you have to do, I think. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I did. You could paint this twig white, or you could give it, you know, a dry brush effect to lighten it up if you wanted, but I thought it was perfect with the jute twine and those really pretty tassels. I didn't have to paint the pieces themselves because I think they were the perfect colors, and I love this combination. And here it is all finished. I love how this turned out, and like I said, it was super easy. I mean, you could take it to another level and maybe add some more if you like, but I just love the simplicity and the natural look of this. I love how this turned out, and I hope you like it too. For this next project, I'm going to be using 2 of the football Dollar Tree wreath forms, and I'm going to also be using some stuffing from the Dollar Tree. I actually have some already that's scrap, so I'm going to use that. A little teeny piece from our tree, and then some Dollar Tree white burlap. I love this. I haven't seen it since, but anytime I can grab some of that, I will. And then some more of our fairy lights. And then I have some fabric that I've had. This is fabric that is actually from our daughter Kennedy, who's now 24 years old. This was from her nursery. So anyway, I'm going to take my big fat cutters and I'm going to cut my football right about 1/3 of the way down and get rid of that second piece, that top piece. We're going to be using the bottoms. And so I'm going to put these together just like we did with the pumpkin wreath, and I'm going to use my nylon zip ties. I have smaller ones too, so I use those smaller ones for this. Now I'm going to add my fairy lights now. You could add this a little bit later, but you'll see why I want to get it in there now. There's all these little pokey things. I'm going to bend those open ends all the way down so we have kind of a little platform at the top there, but also so, you know, I don't cut myself up and they're out of the way. So I'm just using my needle nose pliers again to bend that wire down. And now we have a little base. So I'm going to take my burlap, and any Dollar Tree fabric comes really, really wrinkly, so I'm gonna iron this out with my mini iron. I'll have this linked in my description box below as well. And then before I wrap the bottom, this is gonna become an acorn, I'm gonna stick the little on and off switch through my burlap, so I just cut a little hole in there. And then to kind of give me a second set of hands, I'm gonna put my burlap over those little pieces of bent wire, and that's just gonna hold it in place for the time being while I wrap this. And I'm just gonna use my hot glue, add it where I can. Again, I should be using my finger protectors. Oh, here, I put it on. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm gonna just start gathering that up. Now, where my little on and off switch is, that's gonna be the back. This is gonna be laying over, but I just wanna make sure that that switch is on the back. And then the front, you just kind of are a little more careful with the front. You know, you don't want any mess ups towards the front where everything is going to show. So anyway, I'm going to cut off my excess fabric and get that all hot glued down. And I want it pretty flat, but I like the gathers also. So that's, you know, I want more of those towards the back, but if some show in the front, you know, it looks a little more textile-y and foofy. So I don't know, just adds a little more cuteness. So now I'm going to take some batting and hot glue that around the edge of my acorn towards the top. I'll do that all the way around, and that's just going to give it some puffiness and sweetness on the outside rim. And then I'll take that batting and add it to the top to make a little poof, and that's going to be the top of our acorn. So now I'm going to take some of that fabric, and I just realized this was from some curtain valances that I had in our daughter's room, but anyway, kind of sad. So I'm just going to start hot gluing that and gather that around. I was thinking to make this fully Dollar Tree. They sometimes carry the little beanies, you know, the sweatery beanies. That would have been perfect for this because it would have made it a lot easier. But anyway, I'm just going to top that off and then cut off all of that excess fabric. And then I'm just going to take my glue gun and push down all of those areas where the fabric comes up just to keep it all in place. And then I'm going to go back in with some nautical rope and cover up those raw edges. And I'm going to go around there a couple of times and then cut that off in the back in the same area of where my little on-off switch is. And then finally, I'm just going to make a little slit with my craft knife at the very top and then hot glue a little stem into the top of his cap, and it's done. And here it is, all finished and lit up, and I love how this turned out so much. Again, anything with lights is always fun to see and festive and sweet, I think. I think this is a high-end way of adding some fall to your decor in those neutral tones. I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For this next project, I'm using 3 pieces of wood from our tree and 3 wooden clothespins, and I'm going to be using my antique wax to stain my clothespins a really pretty brown. I'm just going to paint that on there and then wipe it off with a paper towel. These are going to be the stems of our 3 pumpkins. And then I'm going to take some celery chalk paint, add a lot of water to it and kind of get that diluted. And then I'll take a paintbrush, and I decided which colors I wanted each of my little logs to be. And I'm just going to give that kind of a dry brush, but it's really wet. So because the surface is so textury, I'm going to go over it, but leave a lot of that wood showing. So I had Israel cut these down to 9.5 inches, 10.5 inches, and 11.5 inches so that they would be staggered. And I love when things are in groups of 3. So when I was painting on the celery, I noticed it was just a little too, I don't know, single dimension. I needed some more shadows and blending in there. So I'm going to add some darker green, which is my moss chalk paint. And then I'm going to do the orange one, and pumpkin is super, super bright. So I'm going to tone that down. And I actually just used my green paintbrush and left a little of that green on there. And then for the third one, I'm going to use my white and a little bit of antique wax as well. So once my pumpkins are all dry, I'm going to take my little clothespins and hot glue those to the top of each of my little logs. And you could put a little hole in there to make it even more sturdy. But anyway, I'm going to take some raffia and make sweet little perky bundles of joy. And I'm going to attach those with some jute twine and then tie them to my little stems. And I'll do that on all 3 of those. And I was going to make a bow for each of my logs, but you'll see I end up kind of toning it down a little bit. I'm going to take some Walmart drop cloth and cut some strips. I had some scraps, so I wanted to use those because I didn't have any light colored thick ribbon for this, so I'm just going to make some, and then I'll just fray those edges to give it some more cuteness. And then I'm taking some Dollar Tree burlap, and then I'll add some more Dollar Tree ribbon and then tie that in a little bundle and dovetail the ends of those. And then once I have my little bundle all put together, I'll use a chenille stem to attach those and keep them all snug as a bug in a rug, and then I'll attach that to my stem and cut off the excess. And then I'm going to take some off-white hydrangeas, and I'll just take one little piece of it and hot glue that to the center of my messy bow. And then for the other 2, I decided just to go a little more simple so you could still see everything. And I'll take some hot glue and add my little piece of Walmart drop cloth, and then I'll take some more glue, put it on top of that, and add some Spanish moss. And then on my right pumpkin, I'm going to take a little burlap leaf from the Dollar Tree and hot glue that so that it's kind of poking out from the side. And then I found these little chipboard medallions at the Dollar Tree. I usually save all of mine, but these were perfect because they're easy to add to a wreath or anything you want. A project like this is perfect. I used the gather one, and I'm just going to use my crocodile to make a hole at the very top, and then I'll take some jute twine, tie that in there, and put that on my front smaller pumpkin. And that gives us a little message to gather together for the fall season, just like my little pumpkins are gathered as well. And here they are all finished, and I love how this little trio turned out. If you don't have branches or a tree that passed recently, you could also use 2x4s or scrap wood. But I love how rustic and sweet these turned out. I love them, and I hope you guys like them too. For this next project, I'm using this piece of wood that was cut off of the tree, and I was going to cut this down for my little pumpkins, but when I saw it laying on the table, it has this little kickstand, and it's got that added character of being kind of bent in the middle. So I'm going to take 4 of these battery operated Dollar Tree lights, and I'm going to use my drill and a spade bit to get the size of my candle, and I'm going to put those inside of my log. So I'm just going to pull off the stands on all of these and then add the batteries. And sadly, one of them actually didn't work, and I didn't have another one, so I'll have to change that out. But I'm going to measure on my log and see where I can put these 4 candles, and I want them spaced evenly. And you see there's a bunch of little knots here and there, so I'm going to try and measure around those so that I can get nice level places to put my candles. So I'll just use my spade bit and go down a little ways, and I'm trying to make them pretty level so that they all stand up straight and none of them are a little crookedy or anything. And I'll have my handy dandy drill linked in the description box below, as well as my spade bits. And then once I get those cut, I'm going to take my ATHENA Lady Jane drill and make holes right in between each of those so that I can then add my fall stems right in between each of my candles. So I'm going to hot glue these into each of my little holes, and I'm still able to twist the little flame bulb at the top so I can turn them on and off. And then I'll go in and cut off those little pieces of stem to stick that into each of my drill holes. And I'll fill those holes up, and they're nice and tight, so I didn't even have to add any hot glue. And then this way I can also change that greenery out for any season that I want to. And then I took a little Hello Fall cutout from the Dollar Tree. I marked where my candle would be so that I could add some hot glue to this. Again, you can just pull this off at the end of the season and replace it with something else for Christmas or Valentine's Day or whatever works for the season you're working in. And here it is all finished. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, I added some more fairy lights. Of course, can never have too many lights, but I just love how the little pieces kind of stick out on the sides of my branch, and you can still see the texture and the beauty of our old tree from the side of the house. I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. I hope you enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the little bell so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!